talk about this then, why don't we, right? The Center for Development and Enterprise is calling on Government of National Union partners, the GNU ultimately, to map out what it says is a plausible growth strategy as a condition for passing the budget. The organization has made a number of proposals, which includes reducing spending in the short term and strengthening SARS to go after tax evaders. The CDE's Executive Director, Anne Bernstein, is with us for more on this one. Anne, thank you so much for the time. Appreciated this evening. So what have you made of the discourse between the Democratic Alliance and the ANC, and not just the confrontation of the increase in VAT, but really around also the inability to actually put forward any kind of proposal as yet? Formally, we don't actually know, we're not supposed to actually know that 2 percentage point VAT increase was even stipulated. And now we're already talking about a 0.75 percentage.
Look, there's a lot of politics going on, and I don't have any inside information. On the one hand, this is not good for the country, that I think the ANC, the Minister of Finance, and the President thought they could just pass the budget as they've done previously when they've been a majority party, but we now have a coalition government. And this is an important moment. I am worried about the implications for the next year's budget and the next, but we are where we are. And in many respects, this is an important opportunity, and we need to take it. The country has been going along as though we're not in crisis on almost every front. And we think it's absolutely vital that we get a budget on the 12th of March, that we have real spending cuts in that, I'm afraid, that we get as much money as we can from those people who evade paying tax. And most importantly, we're saying that an urgent growth compact should be part of the deal with regarding to the budget. So we're saying the GNU needs to get a lot more serious about growth, a lot more urgent, and we need some timetables and some big, bold reforms.
And it's a different kind of austerity that is ultimately being suggested here. How do you become pro-growth if you're cutting spending?
Well, let's start with the basics. We're in this mess. Essentially, we must recognize we're talking about a 3-year situation, the medium-term expenditure framework. We get annual budgets, but they're within that frame. We have a hole of about 190 billion rand over that 3-year frame. Now, we all would agree, I think, that government expenditure is incredibly inefficient and wasteful. That doesn't mean every single part of government, but we have too many civil servants who don't do a great job. We have too many senior people who are not really competent to do the job that they're doing. And we never close down failing programs. We have too many programs that don't give great results. And we have much too much corruption and elite looting of state revenue. So in that context, we're saying we can make some cuts, and we give very specific examples. Let me give you one. We're saying that procurement expenditure, which is penciled in the budget we don't have, for 5.4% increase every single one of the 3 years. And we're saying if you reduce that to 3.5%, we could save about 50 billion rand. How do we do that? Well, we cut out all the middlemen. We cut out localization strategies that we don't think are a good thing for growth. And, you know, Eskom has set a precedent. In order for Eskom to give us nearly a year of no load shedding, they had to be exempted from localization requirements. And they could go to the original equipment manufacturers, cut out the middle people, the middlemen, and this worked. We're saying the experiment worked well. Let's apply it to the whole of the state. So that could be 50 billion over 3 years. We could close down the CETAs, another 80 billion over 3 years. Nobody is saying the CETAs work well. We don't know how much money ghost workers would cost, but we certainly have people There are sufficient indications and rumors and discussion about people who either no longer work in the state or are no longer alive, but who somehow draw salaries. We should immediately introduce a review of that and see how much money we could save. There are other examples.
Yeah.
We are also saying, in the context of the crisis the country is in, which is a result of 15 years of reckless spending, reckless economic policy, declining growth, and spending on all sorts of things, that in this context, to agree to a 5.5% above inflation wage increase for civil servants after 15 years of above inflation increases, we think this issue should be on the table now. You reduce that to 3.5%, and we could save, and CPI increases next year and the year after, we could save 100 billion.
And
you
this
could even
sounds...
say, well, let's have some money for doctors and teachers.
Yeah.
And you could reduce it to 60 billion. These are real numbers that help us get to fill this crater of 190 billion.
And this sounds like we need our own Department of Government Efficiency, by the sounds of it, DOGE, as it were. I want to ask about that localization element that you made note of. Localization is ultimately aimed at ensuring that you choose local suppliers, local manufacturers, local producers of items, manufacturing, etc., in order to get things done for our government, which is supposed to help in aiding job creation locally. If you take away localization, does that not take away the very thing you're trying to create, which is jobs?
Not at all. What we need is an expanding economy. How do we get it? We need efficient firms that are competitive, that don't produce goods that are too expensive or low quality. When you and I go shopping, we look for quality goods at, the best possible price. But we're saying the state government policy is that the state should procure goods and services not from the most efficient firm or the lowest price or the best for what they need, but there are a whole welter of regulations, and you've got to go for local production, which tends to make costs much higher, and it makes for a less efficient economy. We've written a lot about this on localization, and this is not a good approach to growing the South African economy. And we're a small economy. We've got to compete globally. So we have to think hard about how we get economic growth. And we're saying that localization and lots of middlemen who push up the price but don't add value is the wrong approach for South Africa now.
Your point taken on that one. How do we better capacitate SARS? Because Edward Kieswetter, the commissioner then, has said that bolstering collection capacity is the best way to raise tax revenue, not hiking taxes. That's a similar sentiment to yourself, to the Democratic Alliance as well. So how do we better capacitate SARS then?
Well, look, the real issue on the table is SARS needs more money in order to go after tax evaders, and we back that. And we're saying, surely this is a no-brainer. Let's give them some more money. 3.5 billion, I think, is the number being thrown around. And let's see what they can do. We don't know how much money can be raised. Mr. Kieswetter has said a lot of money, lots and lots of billions. Well, great, let's get it in as quickly as possible. And we're saying, let's back that strategy. If that doesn't work in, say, a year, well, then we think there are better alternatives than VAT. There are tax rebates that, for example, the auto industry gets for bringing in cars that are made in another country. We do absolutely nothing. We're saying halve that tax rebate.
Yeah.
There's also the better off gets, that's for better off people. And for better off people, we could look at halving the medical aid rebate. So we want to grow the economy. We're looking for things to cut that don't affect growth, and that if we have to cut them, that it's better off people, not the poor, which is a very large proportion of South Africa's population.
So you agree then
But
no
we
corporate
also
tax
say-
increase? You agree no corporate tax
Sorry?
increase?
Absolutely not. South Africa is a highly taxed society, and we know that the more we tax, whether it's personal income tax or corporate tax, we're not actually going to raise more money. People will find all sorts of ways to hide their money, to get it out the country, and this happened previously. So this is not going to help growth. So more tax for corporates, not a good idea.
There's a lot of discourse happening. Are we actually going to have this budget on the 12th of March, you think?
I certainly hope so. We should. It would be bad, very bad for the country to not have that. And you have to start, when you talk about corporate tax or whatever, you've got to start with, firstly, it won't work. It will harm growth. But also, we have enormous wastage in how we spend this money.
Yeah,
And
like I said, and it ultimately all sounds a similar mantra to Doge, and one wonders whether Elon Musk should be doing this in the US or should be doing it here by some of this sentiment that has been put forward. It's an incredulous balancing act, a monumental one. We'll see what happens on the 12th of March. And appreciate the time as well. The Center for Development and Enterprises Executive Director, Anne Bernstein, joining us there as we unpack just budgetary implications. The DA, of course, saying no to another proposal, supposedly 0.75 percentage point increase in VAT. More news after this.